Has a cheap and easy treatment for fibromyalgia, one that makes your symptoms go almost back to nothing, been discovered and then suppressed? Join me for the next few minutes as we discuss the root cause of fibromyalgia and some research that was very compelling, potentially groundbreaking, suppressed, and the research study retracted for bullshit reasons. I think you're going to enjoy this, and perhaps you could benefit greatly if you or a family member suffers from fibromyalgia. I'm Dr. Ken Berry, a family physician with 20 years of clinical experience, and we're going to talk about the cure for fibromyalgia that no one wants to be talked about. Over 10 million people in the United States alone suffer from the severe symptoms of fibromyalgia. These people are 10 times more likely to commit suicide or to attempt suicide because of the severe fatigue, the severe pain, the insomnia, and the depression that go along with fibromyalgia. Many research papers have hinted at the root cause and therefore the cure for fibromyalgia over the past few years, but one research paper just came out and blatantly said it, and the fate of that paper is concerning, and I think you'll see why in just a minute. This research article was published in PLOS ONE, which is a fairly reputable online journal, and the title is Insulin Resistance the Cause of Fibromyalgia? This paper went through all the standard hoops and jumped over all the standard hurdles. The publishers of PLOS ONE approved it, and it was released for preliminary publication. And then after it was published, all of a sudden it was retracted. And the reason for this retraction is very odd. I've actually been in contact with the lead publisher of this paper, and this is what he had to say about the retraction. This is a quote. "We think the retraction was odd, and it came as a surprise. According to the journal, it was based on the premise that we should have obtained an IRB letter of exclusion before we started collecting research data, not after. Neither we nor the academic editors were aware of such a regulation prior to publication. Incidentally, similar retrospective studies abound in the literature. There's hundreds and hundreds of this type of study that are published by many journals without this new requirement. And so, to put it bluntly, they made up a reason to retract this paper. Thus, the lead author goes on to say, we suspect that outside interests probably pressured the journal to retract the study, although we do not know what motivated them to selectively apply a little-known controversial mechanism to retract our study. Complaints from Big Pharma? Who knows? Yeah, who knows? The reason that such a respected researcher as Professor Pappolla, and I agree that there were vested outside interests that had this paper retracted, is because just imagine if every person in the United States who suffers from fibromyalgia stopped eating the foods that contribute to the root cause of fibromyalgia, which is insulin resistance or hyperinsulinemia or pre-diabetes or type 2 diabetes. These are all different ways of describing the same elephant. What if all 10 million of these people immediately adopted a low carbohydrate diet and their symptoms improved so much that they also didn't need to take their Lyrica, their Sevella, their Elavil, their Neurontin anymore? Immediately, overnight, big food corporations and big pharma corporations would lose billions of dollars of profits. So you can see right away why Professor Pappolla and I both think this was squashed by some big players in the game. And because I think this study reveals the root cause of fibromyalgia and therefore directly implies what the treatment or the cure or the treatment to improve your symptoms drastically is. In this study, they used hemoglobin A1C as a proxy marker for insulin resistance or hyperinsulinemia. I think there are better markers for that, and we'll talk about that in just a second. But they found that people who took the drug metformin, which is a very, very inexpensive version of the brand name drug glucophage or Riomet, had a drastic reduction in their pain scores, very often going from a 6 to 8 out of 10 on the 10-point pain scale down to a 0 or a 0.5 or a 1 out of 10 on that same pain scale. He also noticed in the research that there was a direct correlation between elevated hemoglobin A1C and the severity of the symptoms of the people in the study with fibromyalgia. I've included a link to this research study in the show notes below, and also some other research that sufferers of fibromyalgia might find very, very informative and useful for reducing their fibromyalgia disability scores. So the question becomes, okay, so what should I do if I or a loved one suffers from fibromyalgia? Here's what I think you should do. First and foremost, you need to go see your doctor and demand, respectfully demand, that they check a hemoglobin A1C, a C-peptide, and a fasting insulin on you immediately. This is going to tell you your degree of hyperinsulinemia or insulin resistance. And it's also going to uncover whether you have pre-diabetes, which I consider to be early diabetes, or type 2 diabetes that could very well have been undiagnosed if your doctor hasn't been checking these tests in the past. Number two, the drug that Professor Pappolla used in this study was glucophage. Immediately ask your doctor if you can have a prescription. And the research used glucophage 500 milligrams twice a day. And I don't think that's the long-term solution for you. I'm going to tell you what I think that is in a second. But for now, getting you on glucophage could lead to a drastic reduction in your fibromyalgia symptoms. Long-term, you need to understand what is the diet? What kind of diet causes me to have high levels of blood sugar and high levels of insulin that are chronically too high? And that is a high carbohydrate diet, a diet filled with sugars and filled with processed grains. That's the kind of diet that's going to cause you to be insulin resistant or have hyperinsulinemia. So I would implore you to immediately research and adopt some version of a low carbohydrate diet, trying to keep your total carbohydrate intake under 50 total grams a day. This could be a low carb diet, a Banting diet, a ketogenic diet, a carnivore diet. Any of these types of diets are going to drastically reduce your chronically elevated insulin levels, reduce your blood sugar levels back to normal, and begin to reverse your insulin resistance, which, according to this research, appears to be the root cause of fibromyalgia. There's also quite a bit of research showing that most people with fibromyalgia are quite depleted in magnesium, and that indeed their symptoms improve when they start getting more magnesium in their diet. Now, I have a video on this channel about high magnesium foods. You might want to pick up something like Keto Chow's magnesium drops so that you can immediately start to get more magnesium back into your body while you're learning which foods are high in magnesium. But I think the magnesium does matter, but that's probably 20% of the solution. 80% of your solution to reversing your fibromyalgia and the serious symptoms that go along with it is lowering the carbohydrates in your diet. And the first carbohydrates that need to get out of your diet are the sugars and the processed grains, the fruit juices and the fruit juice smoothies. Those are the biggest offenders. Now, of course, if you're drinking soft drinks every day, that's dumb. You need to stop that immediately. But I want you to really think about the dynamics behind how this study was retracted for virtually no reason whatsoever, no meaningful reason. No study participants were harmed. None of their rights were violated in this study. Just out of the blue, this study was retracted. And I want you to really think about what that says about the current state of big food and big pharma in the United States. Please, I implore you, if you know someone with fibromyalgia, they need to hear what's in this video. They need to read this research study. They need to understand what the root cause of their fibromyalgia is. So please share this video with them. And if you would like to help me and become part of Team Berry as we rediscover a proper human diet and uncover the dastardly deeds of big food and big pharma corporations, consider becoming a patron at patreon.com. It's a super quick sign up. You can throw a buck or two my way so that I have more time and more resources to make videos just like this. And you also get a peek behind the scenes at how we do what we do and how all the research is discovered, and then how I get it out to people suffering who need this information. This is Dr. Berry. I'll see you next time.